This is the story of one of the most revered events in football, the occasion when a goalkeeper scores a goal. Now, many goalkeepers have achieved this hallowed feat, with some going on to score more than once during their career. But this is the tale of that special group of individuals who become regular goal scorers. The likes of Jorge Campos, who scored 46 times, or Jose Luis Silverware, who amassed 67 goals. And the greatest of them all, Brazil's Rogerio Ceni, the only goalkeeper to score a century of goals, with a total of 59 free kicks and 69 penalties and one from open play. Ceni is the all-time leading goal-scoring keeper with 129 strikes. Now, when Ceni was scoring his last goal in 2015, a young 11-year-old in San Isidro, Argentina, watched on, dreaming that one day he might make his own mark as a goal-scoring keeper. The boy in question was Federico Gomes Gerth. Growing up in an affluent suburb of Buenos Aires, Gerth quickly developed a reputation as a shot stopper with an eye for goal whilst playing for the youth side at local club Tigre. But before Gerth would make a senior appearance in Argentina, his path collided with Bastian Colbert. Of course, the name Colbert may be familiar to you, as he was himself a goal-scoring keeper of some repute in France's lower leagues. Notching more than 40 goals during his career, his exploits led to him becoming somewhat of a celebrity, appearing on talk shows, in soap operas, as well as in TV commercials, and as the host of award ceremonies. He even presented a Ballon d'Or. Colbert was a regular on the red carpet, and he embraced the celebrity lifestyle and could often be spotted with an actress on one arm and a model on the other. But he is best remembered for his role in one of the most infamous games in French football. The year was 2009, and fourth-tier side Colbert had a Coupe de France run that captivated the nation. The public were gripped as the underdogs from Brittany progressed to the semi-final, where they were drawn against giants AS Monaco. Colbert's story was enhanced by the fact that Colbert had scored 3 times during this amazing cup run, and in that semi-final he had the game of his life, pulling off a string of miraculous saves to take the tie into extra time. With the match heading towards a penalty shootout, Colbert raced from his goal and punched a Monaco corner clear. All of France held its collective breath as Colbert players flooded forward on the counter-attack. Their centre-forward bore down on goal, about to release a shot that would have taken the Minnows to an unlikely final, before a scything tackle from a Monaco defender halted his progress. The shrill of the referee's whistle was greeted with gasps from the stands as the official pointed to the spot. Not only did a 4th division side have a penalty kick that would send them to a French Cup final, but the kick would be taken by their goalkeeper. Colbert jogged forward confidently. In more than 400 senior appearances, he'd never missed a penalty. In training, he would practice taking them whilst blindfolded. And as he lined up poised to score the goal that would send shockwaves through the footballing world, he wiped a lone bead of sweat from his brow. He strode up to the ball and struck it firmly towards the top corner of the goal. He watched as it curled perfectly towards the net, already raising his arms triumphantly skywards to celebrate the greatest goal of his long career. But as the ball travelled, it continued to curl. Colbert watched helplessly as the ball smacked against the crossbar. He'd missed the first penalty kick of his career, and on the biggest of stages. He sank despondently to his knees and put his head in his hands without realising that the game was still going on. A Monaco defender had collected the ball as it rebounded off the woodwork and was now leading the charge upfield. By the time Colbert realised what was going on and began sprinting back, a Monaco forward was already racing towards goal and had the simple task of stroking the ball into the unguarded net. There was barely enough time to restart the match before the referee blew the final whistle. Colbert was disorientated. Teammates consoled him as Monaco players celebrated that he was in shock. He ran past journalists that clamoured for a post-match interview and disappeared down the tunnel. For weeks afterwards, Colbert's miss was played on news channels across the nation. Children would reenact the event in the playground, and doing a Colbert even became French slang for choking at the decisive moment. That summer, Colbert's contract with Quimper expired, and out of sympathy they offered to renew it, but Colbert knew he could never take to the field again. He moved back to his hometown of Montbéliard and retreated to a life as a recluse. His celebrity friends deserted him, and he took solace in wine and pastries. When the money ran out, he reluctantly took a job coaching youth goalkeepers at local side Sochaux. But each time he heard the innocent laughs of the children on the training ground, he knew they were sniggering as they recalled their coach's infamous miss. After 14 years working as a coach at Sochaux, the scars slowly faded and Colbert began to forge a reputation as a talented and innovative youth coach. He became manager of Sochaux's under-19 side, leading them to national youth honours, and helped to develop players such as Liverpool's Ibrahima Konate and Inter's Marcus Thuram. Under Colbert's leadership, Sochaux's youth team thrived, but their senior side was in crisis. After almost a decade in Ligue 2, the club were demoted to France's third tier due to financial reasons. Their first team manager left with his backroom staff, and their best young players were sold off. A series of high-profile managers were linked with the vacancy, but all turned it down, and the club began the 2023 pre-season with Colbert as interim boss. By the time he took the temporary reins, the club had already confirmed the signing of one Federico Gomes Gerth for £900,000. Initially, Colbert was resistant to the idea of having a goal-scoring keeper in his squad, as he was still haunted by the events of that cup semi-final all those years before. But he had to admit Gomes Gerth had credentials. Technique of 8, free kick taking of 12, composure of 9, and penalty taking of 20. This meant that he would always win penalty competitions in training, much to Colbert's exasperation. And so, with a lack of a set-piece specialist in his squad, Sochaux kicked off their season with little option but to let an enthusiastic 19-year-old Argentine keeper take responsibility for their free kicks and penalties. Gerth introduced himself to Sochaux supporters in a pre-season game against Belgium outfit Patra Maasden. In the 42nd minute, young striker André-Philippe Kofi was fouled in the box. Gerth glanced over to his manager looking for confirmation that he was allowed to take the spot kick. Colbert reluctantly agreed, and Gerth bounded forward excitedly. His coach held his breath as the memories of Monaco raced through his mind, but his young protege banished his manager's fears by sending the goalkeeper the wrong way and placing the ball firmly into the corner of the net. Colbert afforded himself a wry smile, but he knew he had much work ahead of him as he prepared Sochaux for the season. He opted to deploy an expansive 4-2-3-1 formation utilising pacey wide players and tireless midfield runners. The board allowed him to sign some players on free transfers, such as experienced midfielder Marco Benassi and on-loan winger Josue Casimir. And with no permanent appointment as manager on the horizon, Colbert led the side into their first competitive game of the season as they took the long road to Rouen for an away game. Despite creating the better chances, the match drifted towards full-time locked at 0-0 until a Rouen attack down the right flank in the 88th minute. The ball fell perfectly to a Rouen midfielder who beat Gerth at his near post to leave Colbert staring at defeat in his first game in charge. In response, the manager sent on experienced winger Jodel Dossu as a substitute. Deep into stoppage time, Dossu played a searching through ball forward that the Rouen defence failed to clear. With one touch, the winger controlled the ball on his instep before crashing a 25-yard strike past the Rouen keeper to give Colbert a draw in his first game in charge. Had Sochaux lost that first match, the board may well have acted swiftly to bring in an experienced first-team coach. But instead, Colbert guided Sochaux to victory in each of the next 3 matches, and in the next game, a bond between Colbert and Gerth was formed that would span the next 2 decades. On a warm evening in early September, Sochaux travelled to a Friday night fixture away at Martigues. Colbert's men fell behind early, but in the 31st minute they were awarded a penalty. Since his goal in pre-season, Colbert had come to accept that Federico Gomes Gerth would be the team's penalty taker. He'd spent hours talking with the young Argentinian, explaining the attention that a goal-scoring keeper would attract and how high-profile any misses would be, even showing Gerth YouTube clips of his infamous miss against Monaco. Gerth could see the pain his manager still felt about the incident, but it didn't dampen his enthusiasm to score goals. In fact, It made him even more determined to succeed so that he could repay his manager's faith. And in that game against Martigues, he had his first opportunity to do so. As he ran forward, he turned and gave his manager a confident thumbs up whilst Colbert looked on anxiously. But Gerth was focused, and what's more, he was accurate, confidently placing the ball into the side netting. As Colbert had predicted, this goal attracted the attention of the national media, but in the days that followed, the young keeper preached the same message in every interview with reporters. This goal was for his coach. Fans didn't need to wait long to see another goal by their keeper. Later that month, an unbeaten Sochaux faced Dijon at home. A win for either side would send them top of the table, and Sochaux made a dream start, taking the lead inside 60 seconds. And on 40 minutes, the Stade Auguste Bernal were on their feet once more as Gerth treated the 12,000 spectators to his second goal of the season. He notched his third against Versailles in the next home fixture before a cup tie that really caught the attention. One of Gerth's heroes was Jorge Campos, who played as both a goalkeeper and a striker during his career. Gerth would frequently play up front during training sessions, and at 6'4" tall, he was a menacing target forward. In the lead-up to Sochaux's 5th round cup game, Gerth pleaded with Colbert to start him up front so that he could showcase his attacking talents. With the side still unbeaten in the league, the press was speculating that Colbert could be awarded the manager's job full-time, and the coach was keen to rest his forwards for the cup game, so he relented and started Gerth up front. It didn't take long for his faith to be repaid as Gerth beat a defender to a lofted ball into the box, sending a looping header into the goal, and he added a second from the penalty spot in the second half during an 8-1 victory. Midway through October, Gerth had scored 5 goals and was becoming a major talking point in French football. Journalists flocked to the training ground hoping to grab a few words with the man they had nicknamed Le Gerth. But during each interview, the goalkeeper would politely smile and modestly reply that his goals were due to the coaching he received from Colbert. He went on to score his 6th, and then his 7th, and his 8th goals, all from the penalty spot, but would have to wait until March before he added his 9th and 10th in successive fixtures. By April, Colbert's energetic young side were lifting the title and celebrating promotion, but Le Gerth was unsatisfied. Despite notching 10 goals, 9 had been from the penalty spot, and he had not yet hit the back of the net from a free kick. That changed during a game against Niort in early May. Le Gerth had already notched his 11th of the season, taking a penalty by the time Portuguese fullback Amilcar Silva was tripped on the edge of the box. This was the moment Gerth had waited all season for, and he made no mistake as he curled the ball into the corner of the goal to secure his second brace of the season. He scored Sochaux's final goal of the campaign in a 4-1 victory against Le Mans, leaving him with 13 strikes in 38 appearances, in a season that ended in promotion for Sochaux and a permanent contract for the coach that had led them to the title. However, as the pair celebrated success, a sinister presence loomed in the background. By now, Le Gerth was becoming notorious across France, not just for his goal-scoring exploits, but for his quality between the sticks. During the off-season, Ligue 1 side Caen came in with a sizable offer for his services. However, there was no way Colbert was going to part with his prized asset, and he set about improving his squad with the acquisitions of Hassan Ouedraogo, who joined on loan from Schalke, and Billy Koumetio, who signed from Liverpool. These recruits lifted Sochaux to 20-1 shots for the Ligue 2 title, but Colbert had aspirations of doing even better. The season started positively with 5 wins in the opening 10 matches, with Le Gerth scoring his first Ligue 2 goal away at Quevilly-Rouen. Halfway through the campaign, Sochaux were riding high at the top of the table and were on an extraordinary run in the Coupe de France, defeating top-flight sides Bordeaux and Rennes en route to a quarter-final tie with Nîmes, aside from the division below. This was a chance for Sochaux to reach a cup semi-final and for Colbert to potentially banish some of his French cup demons. But despite dominating the match, Sochaux went down 2-1 to their lower league opponents, and their league form also began to decline, with Le Gerth suffering a poor run of form, as well as missing 3 penalty kicks in a row. Supporters began to question Le Gerth's performances and Colbert's tactics, but the pair answered their critics emphatically as Sochaux won 17 of their remaining 18 matches, with Le Gerth rediscovering his goal-scoring touch, adding 4 league goals to the 3 he scored in the cup, as Sochaux sealed back-to-back promotions and a return to Ligue 1. But little did they know that life off the field would soon become even tougher. Following the investment in the squad last campaign, Sochaux had no budget to spend on players, so Colbert set about bolstering the ranks with free signings, such as experienced striker Enzo Crivelli, backup goalkeeper Zach Stefan, and midfield schemer Edouard Michou, who was released by PSG. Despite the success of the past 2 seasons, the pundits expected Sochaux to struggle, and an immediate return to Ligue 2 was a distinct possibility. However, the season began encouragingly with a 2-1 home win against Nantes, before draws were earned against Metz, and then Le Havre, and also Bordeaux, along with a victory against Reims, which meant Sochaux were unbeaten in their opening 5 matches. However, optimism was short-lived and defeats followed against Brest, South Coast outfits Nice and AS Monaco, and even in matches Sochaux were winning, the side were conceding lots of goals, with fans questioning Le Gerth's form and Colbert's cavalier approach. Pundits alleged that the manager was more concerned about creating a tactic that would win free kicks and penalties for his protégé to take than he was about ensuring survival. And when the transfer window opened in January, social media was abuzz, with pleas by supporters to strengthen the defence. But Colbert trusted the squad he'd assembled, and this bold approach produced some memorable victories against the likes of Strasbourg, as well as traditional powerhouse Lyon. But there were also heavy defeats against the likes of Marseille, Racing Club Lens, and of course PSG. Under Colbert, it was either a swashbuckling victory or a demoralising defeat. Yet despite losing 13 matches, the 13 wins Colbert had masterminded meant that Sochaux still had the opportunity to secure a European finish. They were victorious in their next match against Lille before suffering defeat against Strasbourg, meaning that Sochaux needed a win in their final game against Metz to secure 7th place in the league and qualify for the Europa Conference League in their first season back in the top flight. The side produced a masterclass in attacking football, demolishing their opponents with 2 goals by Paris Brunner and 2 more by Gaëtan Wiesbeck, despite finishing 39 points behind champions PSG and 12 behind 6th place Nice, and having lost 14 matches, conceding 62 goals in the process. Sochaux had qualified for European competition. But as their supporters celebrated this achievement, the newspapers the next morning saw Colbert make the front pages rather than the back, as he was accused of murder. At the height of his fame many years ago, Colbert had appeared in commercials, on game shows and in magazines. At one stage, the press nicknamed him Oui, given that he would agree to anything if the fee was right. One such opportunity had emerged many years ago as his agent spotted the chance to launch Colbert's music career. This agent, a one Hercule Misteau, only had 2 clients on his books. As well as Colbert, he had Chip the Chimp, who had appeared as an extra in George of the Jungle alongside Brendan Fraser. But of course, Chip had always been notoriously difficult to work with. Rumours of his hedonistic lifestyle circulated, and accusations of inappropriate behaviour plagued his career. And so it was no surprise that Monsieur Misteau began to struggle to find work for his former star client. However, as Colbert's fame reached its pinnacle, Misteau spotted an opportunity. He could cash in on Colbert's fleeting notoriety by convincing him to record a pop song featuring Chip. The novelty would catapult the pair to unprecedented stardom and would make a tidy sum for Monsieur Misteau. On the day of the recording, all was going well until Colbert reached the first verse of their cover of The Monkees' Daydream Believer. At this point, Colbert had the sudden realization that this was a commercial opportunity even he should have turned down. He looked over at Chip, wailing into the microphone, and he knew that launching a music career would make him a laughingstock. This was a gimmick so crass, not even Colbert could go through with it. So as the music continued and a helpless Chip looked on, Colbert threw down his headphones and left the studio. Monsieur Mistou was furious. He remonstrated with Colbert, claiming that the pair had a verbal agreement, and unless his client returned to the studio, he would sue him. But Colbert could not be convinced. A cover song recorded with a disgraced chimp was too low, even for him. Monsieur Mistou dropped Colbert as a client, and the pair had not spoken since. That was until Colbert had been appointed caretaker manager of Sochaux, at which point Mistou decided to cash in. He still had video recordings of the studio rehearsals of the song that he'd planned to use as footage to make the music video. But now he and Chip could use it to blackmail Colbert. Unless he agreed to pay them both €3,000 a month, he would leak the videos to the press. Colbert would become a national joke for the second time in his life, and his job as a football coach would become untenable. Colbert felt he had no choice but to agree, and for the next 3 seasons he would transfer €3,000 to Mistou's account each month and $3,000 to Chip's. This arrangement would have continued were it not for a chilling discovery at a Parisian apartment. Police arrived to find the lifeless body of Chip the Chimp lying on the floor. Monsieur Mistou was called in for questioning, and he pointed the finger of suspicion firmly in one direction. He told the police that Chip had been bribing Colbert, and that he must have confronted the chimp, conveniently admitting that it was him that had been the architect of the scheme all along. "This murder is a clear act of revenge," he declared. Understandably, a murder allegation put a bit of a crimp in Colbert's preparation for the forthcoming season. This would be Sochaux's first campaign in Europe for many years, and they remained Ligue 1 underdogs and 250-1 shots for the title. Money remained tight, with the only players arriving being on free transfers or loans, and the pressures of an ongoing court case and lack of transfer activity resulted in a slow start to the season for Sochaux, losing 5-1 to Monaco on the opening weekend, 6-0 to PSG at the Parc des Princes, as well as further defeats against Strasbourg and Lyon. The form of Gerth also suffered, and he registered just 1 goal in his opening 13 matches, as further heavy defeats followed against Marseille, Monaco, Nice and Crystal Palace as Sochaux began their European campaign. After 20 games, Sochaux languished in 10th position, having won just 6 of their matches. They made it to the last 16 of the Conference League before narrowly losing to Fiorentina, before the team rallied in the final games of the season, securing 4 draws and 5 wins to secure a 9th place finish, narrowly missing out on European football for a second successive season. Gerth scored the club's final goal of the campaign with a majestic free kick, his 33rd in senior football, bringing him level with Hans-Jörg Butt, the legendary German keeper, but he still remained almost 100 goals short of Rogerio Ceni. That summer, the Colbert murder trial began, and France spoke of little else. The case was televised, and the entire nation heard the sordid tale of Colbert's past and the pop song that was never released. The prosecution made a strong case, arguing that Colbert had become enraged when Chip had tried to increase the amount of money he was demanding each month. As the trial reached its conclusion, it looked as though Colbert would lose not just his job, but also his freedom. But then there was a dramatic legal twist. Colbert's lawyers called Chip's girlfriend Juliette to the witness stand. For hours they questioned her about Chip's behaviour and relationships in the months before his death. And then they produced their bombshell piece of evidence. Phone recordings of Chip talking to other lovers, email exchanges that proved his many affairs, and photographic evidence that Chip had been in relationships with other celebrity chimps and had been paying them hush money not to reveal his sordid secrets to Juliette. The defence even produced recordings of Chip boasting about his conquests. As their next witness, they even called one of Chip's lovers to the stand. As she entered the courtroom, Juliette flew into an uncontrollable rage. She tried to attack the witness, screaming, "I'll murder you too for what you did." Juliette grabbed the judge's gavel and launched herself at the witness, who by now had removed all her clothes and looked completely different to the chimp earlier in the scene. Instinctively, Colbert quickly changed into a goalkeeping kit that he just happened to have with him and showed all of the agility of a former professional goalie to dive across the courtroom. He created a barrier between the enraged Juliette and her would-be victim. Juliette swung the gavel back but struck Colbert rather than the rival chimp. By the time he came round, Colbert was now wearing a different colour t-shirt and Juliette was confessing to her crimes. She recalled how she'd arrived at Chip's apartment one evening to find him in an uncompromising position with another woman. Outraged, she had grabbed a lamp to deliver the telling blow before fleeing the scene through an open window. Colbert was pronounced innocent and even presented with a medal of bravery for his courtroom heroics. And as he walked free, the Wren board waited outside, offering him an attractive proposition to take over their club. That summer, Lyon also made an audacious attempt to poach Gomes Gerth, but unburdened after the culmination of the court case, the duo set about delivering Sochaux's best season in decades. It began by them shattering the club's transfer record, signing Paris Brunner for £10 million, a prolific scorer for the club during 2 seasons on loan. Sochaux made an encouraging start as Le Gerth scored the second goal in an opening day win against Lille, and he added 2 further goals during the opening 10 fixtures, leaving Sochaux firmly in the hunt for Europe. And then Sochaux began to find consistent form. They may have succumbed to a 3-0 defeat to PSG, but they beat Reims 6-0, scored 4 times against Clermont, notched the same tally against Brest before defeating Lorient 3-0. After 20 matches, they filled one of the Champions League qualification places. Few in France expected Sochaux to maintain their lofty position, but wins against Lyon, followed up by victories against Nantes, another against Strasbourg, a second win of the season versus Clermont, before another win against Troyes, a triumph against RC Lens, and a second win of the season against Brest, meant that Sochaux defied all odds to finish third in the top flight. Le Gerth had registered 7 goals in all competitions, but the season was not over, as Colbert had guided Sochaux to the final of the French Cup. In the semi-final, they'd been victorious against Lens, but waiting in that final would be PSG, a side that had scored 8 goals against Sochaux in the last 2 games. Kylian Mbappe gave the Parisians a 20-minute lead, and Aymeric Laporte added a second shortly after. But in first half stoppage time, Sochaux won a throw-in. They worked the ball to Ismail Garbi, who made his way into the box before striking the ball past Donnarumma in goal. Sochaux pressed for an equaliser, and in the 68th minute they were aided by a sending off to Manuel Ugarte. And for a moment, Colbert was hopeful he might vanquish his French Cup demons from his own playing career. Sadly, Sochaux were unable to find an equaliser, and a superb season ended in disappointment. But Colbert's managerial magic did not go unrecognised as Lens made a summer approach, but Colbert remained loyal to the Sochaux project and Lens appointed Gennaro Gattuso. The promise of Champions League revenue gave Colbert more room to manoeuvre in the transfer market, and he spent £13 million on 6'8" centre-back Isaac Touré, £1.3 million on Croatian midfielder Luka Vabancic, and £2.7 million on full-back Marc Boubal. And for his final signing, Colbert turned back time to secure the free transfer signing of Cher from PSG. However, the squad remained small, and competing domestically and in the Champions League proved to be a challenge. Sochaux's only victory in the league phase was a 5-1 demolition of Ludogorets, and Le Gerth was unable to register his first Champions League goal. However, domestically, Le Gerth had his best top-flight goal-scoring campaign to date. He notched 8 league goals as Sochaux qualified for Europe once more by virtue of a 5th-place finish, and Le Gerth added 2 more goals in the French Cup, making it 10 strikes in total for the season, as Sochaux went on to reach a second successive Coupe de France final. And what's more, this time they would not be facing PSG, but Gennaro Gattuso's Racing Club Lens. By now, Colbert had switched to a swashbuckling 4-2-4 formation, and in the final, Sochaux created a barrage of opportunities before being caught on the counter-attack by an Andy Diouf strike. However, just as in the previous year's final, Sochaux responded in first half stoppage time, as a near-post corner was met forcefully by centre-back Billy Cometio. Extra time was unable to separate the two sides as the tie progressed to a penalty shootout. Winger Jeffinho converted the first penalty for Sochaux, and Gerth pulled off a masterful save to give Sochaux the advantage, before stepping up to convert his own spot kick. This left Jess and Mosquera the task of securing Sochaux their first major honour under Colbert. As the coach stood poised to celebrate, Mosquera decided to try and seal the win with an audacious Panenka that drifted harmlessly into the goalkeeper's hands. The shootout went to sudden death, and with the match poised at 7-7, Sochaux substitute Jordan Torrenariga stepped forward. He powered his penalty down the centre of the goal, but Bryce Samba tipped it over the bar, and Gerth was unable to save Lens' next penalty, and for the second season running, the Sochaux players had to watch on as their opponents celebrated. And for Colbert, it felt as though his French Cup curse continued. During the off-season, 7-time French champions Lyon tried to lure Colbert away, but the board's ambitious plans to build a new stadium convinced the hometown hero to stay. However, Colbert was growing frustrated by his lack of trophies and the cup final defeats, and so he turned to the transfer market. He accepted sizable offers for Isaac Touré and fellow defender Prince Aning to create a transfer war chest that he used to bring in Franco Carboni, Hugo Sotelo, former Chelsea player Marlo Gusto, Turkish star Cengiz Andemir, as well as centre-half Travis Akamea, as well as the jewel in the crown, Dutch striker Sandy van der Korput. These signings helped Sochaux make a breathtaking start to the new campaign, losing just one of their opening 10 fixtures and scoring 10 goals in their first 2 Europa League games. Gomes Gerth struck 2 of the goals himself, and there were 10 in 10 for Van der Korput, who was quickly becoming a fan's favourite, as he led the scoring charts and Sochaux set the early pace in the league. Defeats to PSG, Lille and Marseille saw Sochaux relinquish top spot, but in the cup competitions they were rampant, dispatching both Strasbourg and Guingamp in the Coupe de France and winning 7 of their 8 Europa League fixtures. With just 5 league games remaining, Sochaux was still in a title battle with PSG, but they'd also made it to the semi-finals of both the Coupe de France and the Europa League. By this point, Gerth had contributed 7 goals, including 3 in the league as well as a further 4 in Europe, and he was attracting interest from Frank de Boer's Al Jazeera Sports Club. But of course he was focused on winning trophies with Sochaux, and he began in the French Cup where their semi-final opponents were Lille, and with neither side able to find a goal, the tie went to penalties, with Gomes Gerth being the hero, saving both of Lille's first 2 spot kicks before coolly dispatching his own. He went on to save his 3rd during the shootout as his team reached a 3rd cup final in 3 seasons, but arguably even tougher opponents awaited them in the Europa League semi-final as they were drawn against Spanish giants Valencia. Cengiz Andemir fired Sochaux into an early lead, but goals by Matias Cerezo and Hugo Duro meant that the Spanish side escaped France with a first leg lead. When Duro put Valencia 3-1 ahead on aggregate after just 5 minutes of the second leg, it looked like Sochaux would fall short, but goals from Demir and a brace from Paris Bruna meant that Sochaux now had the opportunity to win 2 cup finals. In the Europa League, they faced English side Newcastle, the only club to finish above them during the league phase. Bruna latched on to a Marla Gusto through ball to give Sochaux an early lead, but Lewis Miley equalised just 5 minutes later. Centre-back Travis Akamea restored Sochaux's lead after 20 minutes. But in the second half, Anthony Gordon squeezed home Newcastle's second equaliser of the evening. The game looked to be heading to extra time, but 10 minutes from the end, Casemiro escaped down the right before a mix-up in the Newcastle defence allowed Cher to finally believe in life after love. Colbert desperately made changes to try and hold on to this lead and began instructing his players to waste time, and his tactics worked perfectly as the seconds ticked on. Sochaux secured their first major trophy during the Colbert reign, with the game capping a magical season for Gerth as well as for his coach. But there was still one game of the season remaining. The French Cup final saw Sochaux take on a Marseille side inspired by Alejandro Garnacho, but the Argentinian was no match for Sochaux, who took the lead through a close-range strike by Paris Bruna before Travis Akamea scored his second goal in a major final in the space of just 4 days. Colbert had now guided elevated Sochaux to 2 major honours, and Le Gerth's 7 goals during the campaign left him with a career total of 57, taking him beyond Jorge Campos in the all-time standings and with Jose Luis Silverware now in sight. The investment of the previous seasons meant a more prudent transfer window for Colbert. Going into his 8th campaign in charge, Athankosi Zulu was plucked from South African football, Igor Svetkovic arrived from Serbia, and Tristan Troncoso joined from Argentina for a combined total of just £12 million. There were plenty of familiar faces in the dugouts across France for the 2030-31 season, with World Cup winner Laurent Blanc as calm boss, Fernando Torres had taken over at Lens, Brendan Rodgers was calling the shots in Lille, Marco Silva traded London for Lyon, Steve Cooper had made his way to Rennes, Vincent Kompany was overseeing the Reims Revolution, and there was a Tedesco in Toulouse, all while Luis Enrique continued to guide PSG to trophies. Europa League holders Sochaux took on Champions League winners PSG in the UEFA Super Cup, suffering a bruising 5-1 defeat, off the back of already losing 3-0 to the same opponents in the Trophée de Champion. With just 1 win during the opening 4 league games, it was a slow start for Colbert and Le Gerth, but 8 wins in September and October saw an improvement in both League and Champions League form. Despite still not registering his first Champions League goal, Le Gerth had scored twice in the league and 3 times in the French Cup as Sochaux climbed to 5th in the table. They progressed to the quarter-finals of the Cup and qualified 4th in the Champions League, but unfortunately this was as good as the season got, as they crashed out of Europe at the round of 16 stage to domestic rivals Nice, experienced penalty shootout heartbreak once more as they lost 10-9 to Metz in the French Cup semi-final, and seemingly missed out on qualifying for the Champions League by a solitary point before France were awarded a 5th spot in the competition. In his quest to become the all-time leading goal-scoring keeper, Le Gerth's 9 goals in all competitions meant that he was just 1 short of Silverware going into season 9 of his professional career, and it did not take him long into the next season to eclipse the Paraguayan, scoring his 67th career goal in a draw with Monaco and his 68th in a home victory against Le Havre. In total, Le Gerth notched 9 goals during the season, including 7 in the league, but it was a frustrating campaign for Sochaux as they exited the cup on penalties to Lens, and despite holding a first leg lead against Leipzig in a game where Le Gerth scored his 2nd Champions League goal of the season, they were defeated 3-0 in Germany, losing 4-3 on aggregate. In the league, PSG were finally dethroned as champions, but by Nice rather than Sochaux, who laboured to a 6th place finish. So going into season 10, Colbert decided to take decisive action, which caused dismay amongst many supporters. The development of the new stadium meant finances were poor, so Colbert decided to take financial matters into his own hands by moving on established stars. Club icon Casemir, who'd been with Colbert since he first took over, left to join Burnley. Travis Akamea, who'd scored in the French Cup and Europa League finals, was moved on to Saudi Arabia, and Colbert decided that another hero from those finals, Cher, wasn't strong enough and he departed for Reims. But the surprises kept coming as he allowed Cengiz Andemir and Igor Svetkovic to follow Akamea to Saudi Arabia for a combined 56 million, and he let leading striker Paris Brunner complete a big money move to Manchester City. In their place, Arda Güler had arrived on a free transfer the previous window, and Colbert brought in youngsters from Barcelona and PSG on loan, but the consensus was that Sochaux were significantly weaker than in previous seasons. But Colbert had faith in some of the bargain signings he'd been developing, such as Argentine midfielder Claudio Echeverria, Christian Troncoso, who was signed for just 7 million, and of course the £22 million acquisition of Santi van der Corput, who'd notched 52 league goals in his first 3 seasons with the club. These players combined to help Sochaux have another memorable campaign, as they finished 3rd in the league once more, securing Champions League football, with Gomes Gerth contributing 8 goals, making it 15 in all competitions. He hit a record 6 in the Europa League, where Sochaux went on to reach the final. Having finished 6th during the league phase, they defeated Lucerne in the round of 16, French rivals Lyon in the quarter-finals with an incredible 9-1 aggregate triumph, before dispatching Wolfsburg in the semi-finals to set up a tie with Portuguese giants Porto, where goals from Arda Güler and a second from on-loan forward Torre secured a 2-1 victory and a second European trophy in the last 4 seasons. This meant the club moved into their new stadium as Europa League winners, with Gomes Gerth scoring the first goal at the new arena. Supporters were hopeful that Colbert would add to what was a very small squad, but Colbert dismayed them by cutting costs further, with Hugo Satella the most high-profile departure, and Colbert bringing in just one loan signing to replace them. The first-team squad contained just 17 players as the season approached, including academy products such as 15-year-old Christopher Jameau. But Colbert had a plan. He knew that to compete with France's top clubs, he must first clear Sochaux's debts and invest in talented youngsters that he could sell on for a profit to improve the club's finances. He hoped that a blend of free transfers and loan signings and bargain picks would allow Sochaux to continue to compete for European qualification whilst he developed players and created a transfer war chest. His plan seemed to be effective as Sochaux finished runners-up behind PSG, with Santi van der Korp the league's second top scorer. By the end of the campaign, Sochaux had money in the bank but had remained competitive despite selling key names, and this emboldened Colbert to go even further. During the off-season, he raised a staggering £370 million, as fans watched on aghast as star name after star name left the club. Arda Güler moved on for £100 million, and Malo Gusto fetched 40. Claudio Echeverria moved to Spain for £59 million, and perhaps most controversially, Santi van der Korp departed for Real Madrid for 102. Pundits derided Colbert, claiming you could not continue to sell such talented players and remain competitive. But Colbert disagreed and set about signing the next generation of bargain wonderkids. Jorge Rodriguez arrived from Sporting, Matthias Salah replaced Van der Korp, Saïd Jabbour made the move from Reims, and Hugo Vergès swapped Anderlecht for Ligue 1. An assortment of free transfers, former on-loan players and bargain signings added depth to the squad, and Colbert still had money in the bank. The new signings took a while to gel, but they made it to the last 16 of the Champions League and finished 6th in Ligue 1, and for Gomes Gerth it was another successful campaign personally during his testimonial year. Now aged 31, he added a further 11 goals in all competitions, including his 100th senior strike scored in the Trophy de Champion curtain raiser against PSG during a thrilling 3-2 victory, and this campaign left Le Gerth on 110 career goals, 19 behind Rogerio Ceni. But how many more seasons did Le Gerth have at the top level? Season 13 began with Colbert completing his squad rebuilding with the funds he generated over the last year. In particular, he wanted to add firepower to his squad, so Fraser Sharp arrived from Rangers and Till Fiend arrived from Stuttgart. Colbert was convinced they could fill the gap left by Van der Korp. The new-look squad made a strong start to the campaign, picking up points against Lille, Monaco and PSG. Yet, despite an undefeated opening 10 games that brought 6 wins, critics doubted whether Sochaux could continue their strong form. But by the 20-game mark, people were beginning to sit up and take notice. Sochaux led PSG by 2 points at the top of the table and were also performing well in the Europa League. And at the heart of this good form was Gomes Gerth. He'd scored 5 times in the league and added another 3 goals in Europe, taking him to 118 career strikes. In early February, Gerth took to the field in a fixture against PSG that was being billed as a title showdown. Colbert's record against Luis Enrique was poor, but a 2-2 draw at the Parc des Princes earlier in the year left him in confident mood, and he was convinced that they could triumph in this fixture before going on to lift the Ligue 1 title the first time in 98 years. Both teams made a frenetic start to the game, and Ouedraogo put Sochaux in front after 3 minutes, before Fraser Sharp added a second, but PSG found a response in just the 11th minute. But what happened next is still spoken about in French football to this very day. After just 16 minutes, Christian Troncoso stole in at the far post, and Sochaux just kept scoring. And scoring. And scoring. Eventually running out 6-1 victors. This victory left them 4 points clear of their rivals with a game in hand and heaped the pressure on Luis Enrique, who was attempting to win his 12th Ligue 1 title in his 13 years at the club. But Sochaux had a coach determined to upset the odds and win his first. Despite exiting Europe at the hands of Spurs, as well as a league defeat away to Lyon, PSG also faltered away at Montpellier, and Sochaux went into their final 4 fixtures with the title within their grasp. They'd been spearheaded by Fraser Sharp, who'd struck 20 goals in his debut season, and Matthias Salah, who'd amassed 11 assists. They had their first chance to seal the title away to Eddie Howe's Nice. Sochaux raced into a 2-goal lead with goals by Salah and Udrago, only for Dominic Szoboszlai to inspire a comeback for the side from the Côte d'Azur, who ran out 4-3 victors. This gave Sochaux just 2 further opportunities to win the league, with home fixtures against Lens and then Monaco on the final day. Journalists speculated that Sochaux's lack of experience would cost them, and many experts predicted the defeat to Nice would lead to an anxious end of the season. But against Lens, Sochaux demonstrated why they were forging a reputation as one of the most dangerous teams in Europe. Till Fiend calmed all nerves after just 18 seconds, and Stéphane Rivière fired home a second just a minute later. 38,000 fans were treated to an afternoon they would never forget, as Sochaux sealed the title with a resounding 8-0 win. Fraser Sharp scored the goal that allowed him to top the Ligue 1 scoring charts, and Matthias Salah both created and finished chances. Colbert watched on as his team held the Ligue 1 trophy aloft. It was the crowning moment in a career that contained much heartbreak. The missed penalties and the murder allegations all melted away as he basked in the triumph of his achievement. In his post-match interview, Colbert hinted at retirement, admitting he'd finally exorcised the demons from his playing career. But any thoughts of riding off into the sunset were dismissed by his goalkeeping protege, who grabbed the microphone and reminded the reporter that the pair had one trophy they'd still not won. Gerth was desperate for Colbert to continue as coach. He was now just 6 goals shy of Rogerio Ceni's record of 129 career goals, and in truth he realised that his career at the very highest level was winding down, and that a new Sochaux manager would probably look to sign a replacement keeper. But if Colbert would remain at the helm, he could carry on scoring. To his delight, his boss signed a new contract and began preparing the squad for another title battle with PSG. Relatively few acquisitions were made as Colbert showed faith in the squad that had triumphed the year before, and for Gomes Gerth, his focus this season was on Champions League glory, as well as scoring the 7 goals required to become a goal-scoring legend. Unfortunately, Sochaux's Champions League campaign was disappointing, and as October reached its conclusion, Gomes Gerth was yet to register a goal during the season, but he never lost faith in his set-piece ability. His 124th career goal came from the penalty spot against Auxerre, and 2 matches later he curled home a free kick against Basel, before slotting home a penalty against Troyes in his next outing. By Christmas, goal number 127 was scored against Toulouse, and number 128 and 129 were secured in a Coupe de France rout of hapless La Roche-Vendée. This left Gerth needing just 1 more goal to eclipse Rogerio Ceni's record. But then, out of nowhere, the goals dried up. 10 more matches came and went without beating the record, and as the season reached its final stages, even Gerth himself began to wonder when his next goal-scoring opportunity would arrive. The answer was the 28th of February 2037 as Sochaux hosted Lyon. Sochaux were leading 2-1 in the second half, and Fraser Sharp exchanged passes with Christian Troncoso before being felled in the box. Referee Stephanie Frappard held her hand to her ear, waiting for the video referee to confirm whether it was a foul. Sochaux fans held their breath, knowing that they could be about to witness history. Frappard finally blew her whistle and pointed to the spot, and Gomes Gerth went through his customary ritual of wriggling his hands before taking 3 paces back. As he approached the ball, he decided to strike it low to the keeper's left. Fellow Argentine Diego Janssen guessed the right way, but Gerth's penalty was too firm and too accurate, and his 130th goal of his career nestled in the corner of the net. He set off on a victory lap of the entire stadium, receiving applause from home and away fans alike, who all marvelled in his stunning achievement. He added 3 more goals before the end of the campaign as Sochaux retained their Ligue 1 title, and his year concluded with him scoring the opening goal in the French Cup final, as Sochaux went on to seal a Ligue and Cup double. Season 15 saw further Champions League disappointment as Sochaux finished 18th in the league phase before losing to Manchester United in the playoffs. But in the league, they once more romped to victory as PSG languished in 7th place. Sharp and Salah led the league for goals and assists once more, and academy graduate Benjamin Angeli scored the winning goal against Lille in the cup final as Sochaux secured the double-double, and Le Gerth's 12 goals for the campaign took him to a career total of 146. There would be no cup final in season 60, but the league title was narrowly won on goal difference as Sochaux celebrated their 4th consecutive championship win, but once more they struggled in the Champions League. Over the past 4 seasons, several players had propelled Sochaux to greatness. Fullback Saïd Jabbour was now a regular international. Christian Troncoso was an elite centre-back. John Byrne, who Colbert had signed for just £350,000, was now one of Europe's leading left-backs. Dorian Souter pulled the strings in midfield. Christophe Jomo had come through the club's ranks to become a full international, and at the top of the pitch, Matthias Salah and Fraser Sharp were a frightening attacking duo. And in the 2039-40 season, these players helped produce a truly remarkable campaign. For the 2nd successive year, the title was secured on goal difference, Sochaux's 5th league win in a row, and Le Gerth finished the campaign with 12 league goals, his best top-flight tally. Sochaux went on to defeat PSG in the cup final to achieve yet another domestic double, but the players also produced their best ever Champions League performance, qualifying for the knockout stages. In the round of 16, they defeated Porto and triumphed against Leipzig in the quarters, with Gomes Gerth scoring the winner. This set up a semi-final with Italian giants Milan. Sochaux travelled to San Siro for the first leg, where a last-minute strike by Saïd Jabbour snatched a 2-2 draw, and goals from Sharp, Tiand and Gomes Gerth in the second leg meant Sochaux qualified for a first-ever Champions League final, where Real Madrid awaited them. 36-year-old Jude Bellingham captained Los Blancos, and legends of the game such as Yari van der Meulen and Manthos Xenopoulos ensured that Madrid were heavy favourites. The Spaniards possessed a star-studded side, but Sochaux supporters were treated to one of the most remarkable evenings football had witnessed. Matthias Salah gave the underdogs the lead with a tap-in at the far post, and as Madrid pressed for an equaliser, Le Gerth was called into action. On the 70th minute mark, the final hung in the balance, and many still predicted Madrid to secure their 18th Champions League. But urged on by Colbert and led by their inspirational keeper, Sochaux scored a second, before adding a third a minute later, and they went on to score a fourth, and even a fifth goal, all without reply. The French club celebrated their crowning achievement, becoming the champions of Europe with a goalkeeper who'd now notched 178 goals in his career and a manager who had achieved it all. Sochaux added the European Super Cup with a win over Brighton, but sadly they were unable to defend their Champions League crown the next season, exiting to Bayern in the round of 16. They would also experience defeat in the cup final to PSG and were thwarted by Lille as they attempted to win league title 6 of the Colbert reign. Despite Colbert's insistence that he could rebuild the team once more, the 67-year-old was inexplicably sacked by the Sochaux board after this disappointing third-placed finish. He'd taken them from the third tier to Ligue 1 during a time of financial crisis for the club, and he'd led Sochaux to 14 cup final victories, including 2 Europa Leagues and a Champions League, as well as winning 5 Ligue 1 titles. He'd had a stellar managerial career, but football is merciless, and he was replaced by Juventus boss Roberto De Zerbi. The Italian returned Sochaux to the champions of France once more, but it was Colbert's name that supporters still toasted as they lifted the trophy aloft, knowing that they would be forever indebted to their charismatic coach. Federico Gomes Gerth would make just one substitute appearance under De Zerbi and announced his retirement at the end of that campaign. In 19 seasons with the club, he'd won 22 trophies and scored 187 goals, 58 more than his idol idol Rogerio Ceni. As the curtain came down on one of the greatest careers in French football, it was his former coach and mentor that was there to meet him at the final whistle.